US biliary axis. I'm Dr. Rajkumar Wadhwa. I'm working as a chief gastroenterologist at Apollo BGS Hospitals, Mysore, and I have been practicing endoscopic ultrasound for close to 15 years now. Um, Talking about US biliary axis, we all know that ERCP is the standard of care basically because it is less expensive, it reduces morbidity, and gives a better quality while dealing with biliary diseases, and it is now an established procedure of choice in biliary drainage. However, in the best of the hands, 5 to 10% of the cases, we may not be able to successfully drain the biliary tree because of the variety of anatomical, physiological factors. And when this happens, we use alternate methods, which includes PTBD and surgical drainage. However, both these methods are associated with significant morbidity, and in case of PTBD, associated complications to the tune of 1/4 of the patient. US, which has come as an additional modality in the armamentarium for the biliary drainage. It works as a primary rescue procedure, has an advantage of reduced complications, and it can be done by the same person who's doing an ERCP if he's trained in the US. Role as a primary drainage procedure is evolving, especially in the distal malignant biliary obstruction. Now, how do we go about accessing the biliary tree using endoscopic ultrasound? 3 meta-analyses told us that when we access the biliary tree using an endoscopic ultrasound, we have a success rate of more than 90% and an adverse event rate in an acceptable range of about 15 to 20%. When do we choose EUS? We have basically 3 constraints when we are not able to reach papilla, for example, in an altered anatomy of the stomach, or pyloric or duodenal stenosis, either benign or malignant, or when we cannot locate a papilla, like due to tumor infiltration or placement of a duodenal stent. When both these indications are not present, we are not able to cannulate the papilla due to variety of anatomical constraints, like papilla being intradiverticular papilla or located in such a way that we are not able to successfully get into it, even by an experienced endoscopist. Then endoscopic ultrasound can be taken as a method to access the biliary tree. How do we access the biliary tree? Basically, there are 2 anatomical areas from where we can access the biliary tree. That is from the lesser curve of the stomach, which comes into the contact of liver, segment 2 and segment 3. Here, basically, we can access the dilated biliary system from the segment 2 or segment 3 and perform either an antegrade procedure, that is passing the guide wire across the stricture and across the biliary enteric anastomosis into the intestine, and then placing the stent across the stricture or across the biliary enteric anastomosis. Or it can be, when this is not possible, when there is a limitation of you're not able to cross the stricture, then transmural stenting is the accepted procedure, and that can be classified as hepaticogastrostomy. However, the second site from where we can access the biliary tree is from the duodenal bulb, where it is extrahepatic biliary radicals are dilated. Then we can do either a choledochoduodenostomy or a rendezvous procedure. Rendezvous procedure needs an access to the wire which comes out through the papilla, which then can be retrieved, and a traditional ERCP could be performed. Rendezvous procedure could be performed through both transhepatic as well as a duodenal bulb route. Now, when we place a stent in these circumstances, it could be transpapillary stent, like an antegrade procedure or in US rendezvous procedure, or it could be transgastric or transenteric stent, as in US hepaticogastrostomy or rendezvous procedure, and US choledochoduodenostomy. The basic technique of US guided biliary access remains the same. Anatomical locations are different, and hence picking up of the segment of a different segment of the liver is to be justified with when we do a particular procedure. But the basic procedure remains that either we choose a proximal gastric body or the duodenal bulb as a site of initial puncture, and locate the left hepatic duct or common bile duct respectively. Common bile duct is from the suprapancreatic portion right up to the hilum can be used, but it is usually generally in the suprapancreatic area. Color Doppler is then used to avoid intervening vasculature. Puncture is done using a 19 gauge needle. Although earlier needle knife could have been used for puncturing, but it is not justified because it comes at a angle and has a higher complication rate. Once inside the CBD, a guide wire is placed, stabilized, and then a cholangiogram can be obtained. Once a cholangiogram is obtained, anatomy of the stricture and the dilated biliary system is clear, then needle is to be removed and the tract can be dilated using a 6 French cystostome or a balloon of 4 to 6 millimeter in diameter. When cystostome is used, we personally use coagulation current to cause the fistulous opening enlargement. Eventually, placement of the stent, which is more often than not covered self-expandable biliary stent. In rendezvous procedure, instead of placing a stent through the fistulous communication, a guide wire is retrieved through the papilla and a stent is placed using a standard ERCP scope. These are the two locations. Here I would like to highlight about the segments of the liver which we use to access the biliary tree. The segment 2 and the segment 3 are basically the areas from where we can puncture. Segment 3 is preferred. Segment 2 comes proximally, that is when we enter and just at the T junction, when we see the liver, the first segment which we see is segment 2, which is closer to the scope, and slightly posterior is slightly inferior and posterior is segment 3, which can be separated by left hepatic vein. The distance which we choose to puncture should be between 1 to 3 centimeters of parenchyma intervening between the bile duct, and a sufficiently dilated bile duct should be chosen in these circumstances. When we choose the extrahepatic common bile duct from the duodenal bulb, we choose the suprapancreatic portion of the dilated CBD. Again, the procedure remains standard, that intervening vasculature has to be not to be present, and then needle to be punctured. Then guide wire can be used to access either the papilla, or manipulation can be done inside the biliary tree. This is an example of the gastric outlet obstruction and altered anatomy in which hepaticogastrostomy is done. As you can see that there is a sufficient hepatic parenchyma is intervening. Once a puncture is done, a cholangiogram is obtained, and then a guide wire manipulation is done. Guide wire is placed deeply in the segment so that there is no slippage of the guide wire, and after dilating with the cystotome, a self-expandable metal stent is placed. A fully covered self-expandable metal stent can be used, or what we call it as a GeoBar stent, that is partial covering, which can extend to about 70% of the total stent length, can be used. Large segment of the stent should be kept in the stomach so that you do not slip. The stomach does not go outside of the stent does not go outside of the stomach and lie in the free peritoneum, leading to biliary peritonitis. As I mentioned earlier, bile duct diameter should be sufficiently large so that a needle can stay and a guide wire manipulation can be done, and it should be preferable more than 5 millimeter. In a similar manner, antegrade approach can be done. Here the important thing is the guide wire has to essentially cross the area of obstruction once we have chosen the left hepatic duct, and there should be a clear-cut identification of biliary enteric junction. While it is preferable to put the stent crossing the biliary enteric junction and in the bypassing the stricture, however, an intraductal stent placement also can be done, as in these videos. As you can see, after the puncture, a cholangiogram is obtained and a guide wire manipulation is done so that it can go into the duodenum. Once the guide wire passes, a catheter is passed and a confirmatory contrast studies are done so that there's a confirmation that our guide wire is deep into the jejunum. Then a cholangiogram is obtained, stricture length is seen, and after seeing the stricture length, a self-expandable metal stent. In this self-expandable metal stent is left in the intrabiliary tree in view of the long stricture, long and proximal stricture, to see this antegrade procedure. Choledochoduodenostomy, when papillary access is not feasible but extrahepatic CBD is dilated, is the procedure of choice. The procedure remains a standard. The important thing should be kept in mind that 1.5 to 2 centimeters of stent should be kept in the duodenal lumen. It is generally believed that it should be kept in the stomach across the pylorus, but it is not, to avoid the slippage of the stent into the duodenum. But now generally it is believed that the stent can be left in the duodenum, and if in a few days time by any chance the stent slips, by that time the fistula would have formed and the biliary drainage continues. The advantage is, if it is especially in the distal malignant biliary obstruction, you are not going through the obstruction, and hence the stent in growth is limited. However, since there is no constriction, there is a risk of migration in these circumstances. A EUS rendezvous procedure, as it is possible in both these segments, that is through the liver or through the duodenum. Here papilla is accessible, but cannulation is failed. Dr. Vinay Dhir had published a paper in which he had demonstrated that this particular procedure is superior to pre-cut papillotomy without having an increase in complication rates, and it inherently avoids pancreatitis. While procedure can be performed both through the transmural approach in the liver or in the extrahepatic duct, it is safer in the extrahepatic duct, as confirmed by a meta-analysis, as I am likely to discuss in the next slide. Here again, once we puncture the bile duct, we obtain the anatomy and pass the guide wire, but instead of placing a stent, we go with a standard ERCP scope into the duodenum and see the wire emerging from the papilla and retrieve the wire through the ERCP scope and perform the rest of the procedure as a standard ERCP. A 450 centimeter guide wire is preferable. However, manipulation of 450 centimeter wire can sometimes be difficult, and hence in certain units a short 240 centimeters Terumo guide wire is used. In our experience, we use 0.032 Terumo guide wire, which gives it an easier manipulation, because occasionally there can be a shearing if you move 0.035 guide wire up and down across a needle. As was demonstrated by Iwashita et al. in a meta-analysis, large studies have shown that the EUS rendezvous procedure has a high success rate, acceptable, predictable and manageable adverse event rate. And extrahepatic, that is choledochoduodenostomy, is superior to intrahepatic, which has a higher complication rate as compared to choledochoduodenostomy. As it is probably pertinent here to compare the EUS rendezvous procedure with the pre-cut when there is a difficulty in accessing the biliary tree. Pre-cut has been a standard modality of choice, but it requires a lot of experience and has a risk of pancreatitis. It can be a dangerous procedure in an inexperienced hands. So those people who are comfortable doing an EUS rendezvous probably gives a suitable option to avoid pre-cut and go directly for EUS RV. Once we have learned that we have several approaches available, that is from the stomach or from the duodenum, which to choose and when to choose. It is basically decided by what anatomy we are dealing with. This includes whether we have an accessible papilla, whether we have an outlet obstruction, or whether we have an altered anatomy. Also, we all need to know the extent of the dilatation of intrahepatic biliary radicals and common bile duct. So when sufficiently dilated intrahepatic biliary radical and papilla is accessible, then probably you can go for rendezvous procedure. If papilla is not accessible, an initial attempt should be made to place an antegrade stent. If antegrade stent is not possible, then a transmural approach, either through the choledochoduodenostomy or hepaticogastrostomy, can be used in these circumstances. That will also depend on where you have a suitable anatomical location in the common bile duct or in the liver in the form of dilated IHPR. Having said this, do we have any standard way to approach that this particular procedure should be chosen over another one? An approach was attempted while we have a limited data. An approach was attempted as to how to go about doing it. So in US 2000 working group paper, it was said that when possible, USRV should be done and extrahepatic USRV should be the first procedure of choice. While transpapillary and transmural are comparable for technical and clinical success rate, if transpapillary is not possible, transmural is equally acceptable. However, there is a recent change in the thought processes with more experience coming through US choledochoduodenostomy, which has a shorter procedure time and eliminates an important problem of pancreatitis. It is emerging as the first line management for distal malignant biliary obstruction. Another paper in 2016 from Amit Tyberg and al. Gave us an idea how to approach these particular accesses and in which condition we should be using it. If we have a grossly dilated intrahepatic biliary radicals and an outlet obstruction, then we can consider antegrade biliary stent through the liver. However, if a CBD is also grossly dilated and there is a distal malignant biliary obstruction, keep in mind extrahepatic approach is preferable in these circumstances. If antegrade biliary stent is not possible to be placed, then hepaticogastrostomy can be done. In cases of non-dilated intrahepatic biliary radical, it is preferable to do rendezvous procedure and transenteric stent should be the one which should be chosen in these circumstances. Is it all hunky-dory that we can now abandon the ERCP, or whenever the ERCP is difficult, can we straight away go for choosing an US guided biliary drainage? No, there are certain issues even pertinent today, as majority of the data which is available is for malignant biliary obstruction and it is used for palliative intent. The limited data is available for benign diseases. Wire manipulation across the stricture and papilla is a success limiting step for transpapillary or rendezvous approach, which is considered a safer one. If it fails, conversion to transmural approach is mandatory. There is generally a reluctance to use transmural approach, that is doing a choledochoduodenostomy or doing a hepaticogastrostomy for a benign or operable diseases in the form of post-operative strictures. And there is still a considerable risk of complications. Majority of these complications are related to creation of transmural fistula. And that has to be kept in mind while we are learning. If the ducts are not dilated, especially in the intrahepatic biliary tree, there is a challenge for puncture. And to get an access to the biliary tree, we need to have a dilated intrahepatic biliary radicals if we are to approach through the liver. And keeping this in mind, a very effective alternative to PTBD and surgery is now available in the form of US access of biliary tree. It is quite successful in a trained individual's hands and has manageable complication rates. Can be chosen in variety of circumstances in view of variety of access approach available. Thank you very much for your patient listening.
Good morning to all. I'm Dr. Anup K. Koshi. I'm a professor of gastroenterology at the Amrita Institute of Medical Sciences, Kochi. First of all, I thank Dr. Avinash, Dr. Manoj Sahu, and the organizers for giving me this chance. I'll be discussing about EUS guided pancreatic access. So you do EUS guided pancreatic access when an ERCP is needed. That is, when there's an indication to do ERCP, but you are unable to enter the pancreatic duct. So to put in simple terms, the steps are: you puncture the PD, do a pancreatogram, you deploy a stent. So stenting you can do in two techniques. Either it can be a rendezvous technique or an antegrade technique. So I'll be discussing under the following headings: indications, contraindications, patient preparation, steps of rendezvous technique. I'll tell you why old is not always gold, some suggestions on the scope position, needle and guide wire, steps of antegrade technique, problems with antegrade technique, and the conclusion. So coming to indications, as I told before, any indication where ERCP is needed, that is, it can be native papilla or a pancreatico-jejunal anastomotic stricture, that is in a post-triple surgery. But you are unable to enter the PD via ERCP. So the primary indication for the ERCP would have been some obstruction of the PD, that is like a stricture or a stone causing PD dilation, or some PD leaks. But here, then the case with PD leaks, the problem is the PD will not be dilated. So technically, it is difficult to puncture the PD. Coming to contraindications, mainly when you have a platelet count of less than 50,000, or when the INR is more than 1.5, or where there are some intervening vessels in the needle track. Coming to patient preparation, so prior to procedure, we always give antibiotics. We do under general anesthesia. We prefer the prone position, and of course, we use the linear echo endoscope, and we use carbon dioxide. Coming to the steps of the rendezvous technique. So here, in the picture you can see here, first you puncture the PD from the stomach using a FNA needle. After that, you try to aspirate pancreatic juice. It may not always be possible to aspirate pancreatic juice in a non-dilated duct. Then you do the pancreatogram by injecting contrast through the FNA needle. After that, we flush the FNA needle with sterile water around 2 to 2.5 ml. The reason is contrast is sticky, so it will make further guide wire manipulation difficult. And you pass the guide wire through the FNA needle into the PD, and then pass the guide wire across the papilla into the duodenum. Then you form 2 to 3 loops in the duodenum. After that, you remove the FNA needle, leaving the EUS scope and the guide wire in place. Then you remove the EUS scope, leaving only the guide wire in place. Now you have a guide wire which is passing through the mouth, esophagus, stomach, the puncture site into the PD, and then across the papilla into the duodenum. Then by the side of the guide wire, you pass a side wing scope. You can see the guide wire here. By the side, you are passing a side wing scope into the duodenum. So when you reach the duodenum, you can see the wire coming out of the papilla. This is the rendezvous. The word meaning of rendezvous is meeting. So what all are meeting? The scope, the side wing scope is meeting with the guide wire which we have placed previously. So you can see the guide wire which is coming out of the papilla. So in conventional rendezvous technique, what we do is you grasp the guide wire which is coming out of the papilla with a biopsy forceps or a snare, and you pull it out through the axillary channel of the scope and bring it out of the scope. Then over the end of the guide wire, which has been brought out of the axillary channel of the scope, you pass a sphincterotome or a cannula. So the sphincterotome or a cannula will pass through the scope over the guide wire into the duodenum and across the papilla into the PD. So once the sphincterotome or cannula is well inside the PD, you remove the guide wire completely. So now you have a scope in the duodenum with a sphincterotome or a cannula inside the PD. Then you pass another guide wire through the sphincterotome and complete the procedure as in any ERCP. And you place the stent. So these are some of the cases which we have done. The first 3 cases are, you can see dilated PDs. Last is a non-dilated PD. You can see the puncture and pancreatogram in the above pictures. Below you can see the guide wire across the papilla and the duodenum. So this is the ideal case. This is you should have around 2 to 3 loops in the duodenum. So this is the rendezvous technique in a post-Whipple pancreatico-jejunal anastomotic stricture. The technique is the same. With the EUS scope, you puncture the PD. Here you pass the guide wire across the anastomotic site into the jejunum. Then you leave the guide wire there. You remove the scope, leave only the guide wire. Then you are passing an enteroscope by the side of the wire, afferent loop. Then you reach the anastomotic site to complete the procedure. Next, I'll show a video about this conventional Randwood technique. This video was accepted as a video of honorable mention at DDW 2020, which was to be held at Chicago. So this is the same video, so you'll see all the ASG logos here. Is EOS guided PD stenting in a case of pancreatic ascites using Randwood technique. A 40-year-old man, a case of chronic calcific pancreatitis, presented with ascites. Ascitic fluid analysis showed a high ascitic fluid amylase. MRI abdomen with MRCP showed ascites and a collection in the pancreaticoduodenal groove communicating with the main PD. You can see this MRI. You can see the PD here. After that, you can see the collection here. This is the collection in the pancreaticoduodenal groove. And here you can see the duodenum by the side. This is the pancreaticoduodenal groove here. So ERCP was unsuccessful since the duodenal mucosa was grossly edematous and PD could not be cannulated. Subsequently, the patient underwent EUS guided PD stenting using Randwood technique. Here, this is EUS imaging from the stomach. You can see an atrophic pancreatic parenchyma, and this is the PD. This measured about 3 millimeters. This is near the neck of the pancreas. It's the PD here. This is Doppler. There are no intervening vessels. Then we punctured the PD using a 19-gauge FNA needle. This is a 19-gauge FNA needle. We punctured the PD. We entered the PD. After puncturing, we entered the PD. We tried to aspirate, but nothing came. Then we put contrast. Initially, of course, some air bubbles came and can give the contrast here. And we got a pancreatogram. This is the first pancreatogram. So this is the PD. You can see the collection here. After that, we passed the guide wire through the needle into the PD across the leak into the duodenum. This is that. Now you have a guide wire in the duodenum, that is across the leak, across the papilla in the duodenum. Then we remove the needle, leaving only the US scope and the guide wire in place. Then we remove the scope, leaving only the guide wire in place. Then by the side of the guide wire, we pass a duodenoscope. Then the tip of the wire which was coming after the papilla was grasped with the biopsy forceps, and it was pulled out through the accessory channel of the scope. Then over that wire which was pulled out, we passed a ERCP cannula. See, this is what I told you. You can see the edematous duodenum here. So we did a pancreatogram. So this is the first pancreatogram we got. Actually, if you see this pancreatogram, there is a problem here. See, this is the problem with Randwood technique. Sometimes what happens with Randwood technique? This wire, actually you can see here, this wire is going in the PD, coming out of the PD. Actually, this wire should have gone straight up the stomach, esophagus and out. Instead of that, it is looping here. The scope has looped, it has looped over the scope and is going up like this. Come into detail about this just a moment later. So after that, we tried to pass the cannula deep into the PD, but this was not possible because there was a stricture there. No matter how much we tried, we could not pass the cannula deep into the PD. So to dilate that, we tried Sohendra dilators, but it's not possible. This is a Sohendra stent retriever. It's a stent retriever, not a Sohendra dilation catheter. It's a Sohendra stent retriever. You can see the screwing motions here. We have found this to be very, very useful in dilating very tight strictures. This is 7 French Sohendra stent retriever. We did screwing motion. We finally negotiated across the stricture. You can see the stent retriever here. After that, we could pass the cannula deep into the PD. Then we remove this cannula, remove this guide wire, and passed another guide wire deep into the PD. You can see, passed another guide wire deep into the tail of the pancreas. And over this wire, we placed a stent, we placed a plastic stent. You can see the plastic stent being deployed. So this is the final picture here. I'll tell you why old is not always gold. See, conventional Randwood technique, it involves pulling the guide wire through the scope. That is the guide wire which has come out of the papilla through the scope. This is a very cumbersome procedure. You can have guide wire slippage and many sort of mishappenings there. So we use a modified cannula. So the steps are, initial steps till the guide wire is passed into the duodenum by EUS guided PD puncture is the same. But then after the sideling scope is passed by the side of the wire and the wire is seen coming out of the papilla, steps are different. I'll show you that video. This is the image which I showed you, the wire looping and all those things can happen. So to avoid all these things, we use a modified cannula. So what is a modified cannula? See here, we have cut the tip of the cannula and cut the tip so that to make a wedge here. This is a This wire has been passed into the duodenum. See, this wire is coming out of the papilla by EUS carotid puncture. So instead of pulling this wire through the scope, we have passed a modified cannula over it. So this, you can see the cannula gliding over this wire deep into the PD. And with this, you achieve the PD cannulation. So the advantages are, it is a much faster resave procedure and it saves the guide wire. See, in the other technique, you are going to grasp the guide wire with a snare or a forceps. So that will damage the guide wire. The guide wire costs about 20 to 25,000 rupees. So with this technique, you can save the guide wire. So I'll make some suggestions regarding the scope position and direction of the needle and what needle we use and what guide wire we prefer. See, before you do this EUS carotid puncture, the scope position is very, very important. Always under fluoro, see the direction of the scope. You always want the needle to be directed towards the papilla. See, these are 3 cases of PD leaks which we did. The first 2 were successes, the last one is a failure. See the direction of the needle. This is directed towards the papilla. This is directed, this has got a best direction here. And this was a failure. This has got a bad direction of needle. We prefer to use a 19 gauge needle and we use a 0 to 5 inch angle tip torqueable guide wire. So next, I'll show a video where we have put to use all what I just told, what I just suggested. So this video, we presented this video representing India at the World Cup of Endoscopy at DDW 2018, which was held at Washington. So sealing the leaking PD with endoprosthesis in failed ERCP. A 64-year-old man with chronic calcific pancreatitis presented with ascites. Ascitic fluid analysis revealed a high MLase level. An NDCT abdomen and an MRI abdomen with MRCP demonstrated a non-dilated duct measuring 2.6 millimeters with no stricture and with a suspicious leak from the neck of the pancreas. Conservative management using NJ feeding and parenteral octreotide failed. ERCP was unsuccessful and the PD could not be cannulated via the major or minor papillae. Subsequently, the patient underwent EUS guided rendezvous procedure and a stent was placed in the PD, bridging the site of ductal leak. So this is EUS imaging from the stomach. You can see the calcifications here. This is the PD here. This is a 19 gauge FNA needle. This PD measured around 2.6 millimeters. You can see the Doppler here. No intervening vessels. This is the PD here. We punctured the PD using this 19 gauge FNA needle. We accessed the PD and we did a pancreatogram. So we're doing a pancreatogram here. So this is the first pancreatogram we got. Now at the here neck, you can see a leak happening. You can see the leak happening here. After that, we passed a guide wire through this needle across the leak and across the papilla into the duodenum. Then we removed the first needle, leaving only the guide wire in place, scope and guide wire in place. And then we removed only the scope, keeping only the guide wire in place. Then we passed the side-wing duodenoscope by the side of this wire and we reached the duodenum. Here you can see the wire coming out of the papilla. And we used a modified cannula which I just showed you. And this cannula will glide over this wire deep into the PD. So we did a pancreatogram after that. So this is the pancreatogram. Then we passed another guide wire through this cannula deep into the PD and removed the first guide wire. So this is the second guide wire. First guide wire has been removed. We passed this guide wire deep into the PD and we placed a stent over it. The final stent there. So importance of scope position, needle and guide wire, the failed case. Next case, you can see a bad scope position, 22 gauge needle and over 1/8 inch guide wire. See, this again is a case of PD leak, but here we could gain the PD with the ERCP cannula. We did injected contrast. You can see the leak happening here, but what we could not opacify the duct in the body and tail. So we just did a sphincterotomy and put a stent here. You can see it just put a sphincterotomy and put a stent here. So what we thought that if we could somehow puncture the duct in the body and pass a guide wire across the leak in this direction, and we thought we can put a stent bridging the whole leak. So we tried that. With EUS, we did from the body. This is EUS. You can see the body of the pancreas here. This is the PD here. We're applying Doppler just to make sure that's the PD. And we measured the PD. So you can see the PD measured around 0.7 millimeters in the body of the pancreas, 0.7 millimeters. So this you can puncture only with the 22 gauge needle. So this is a 22 gauge needle. And we punctured the PD. We punctured the PD, we entered the PD, we did a pancreatogram. This was the pancreatogram here. See, you can see the other stent which you placed here. This is the pancreatogram here. You can see the PD here, but there no way we could pass the guide wire through this 22 gauge needle into the across the leak. So we could not complete the procedure. So coming to that, see, scope position needle and guide wire. So this importance is that first two cases success, good direction of needle, 19 gauge needle, and O2 inch guide wire. Here, the last case which I showed you, bad direction of needle, 22 gauge needle, 0.18 inch guide wire. But to be frank, in this case, this was the best possible directional needle which we could use. We could never puncture that with a 19 gauge one. Coming to antegrade technique, see, why do you need antegrade technique? So sometimes after EOS guided puncture, you are unable to pass the guide wire across the papilla into the duodenum. Or sometimes in a post-Whipple surgery, you are unable to reach the pancreaticogingival anastomotic site with the enteroscope. So you need antegrade technique. The steps are, this is a post-Whipple surgery diagram. Same, you puncture the PD from the stomach using FNE needle. You try to aspirate pancreatic juice. You do a pancreatogram by injecting contrast through the FNE needle. After that, you pass the guide wire through the FNE needle into the PD. Here, the guide wire is shown crossing the anastomotic stricture. But majority of the cases, you may not be able to pass. That is when you resort to antegrade technique. When you are not able to pass across the stricture or across the papilla, and the guide wire is only in the PD, you resort to antegrade technique. After that, you need to dilate the tract. You dilate this tract, you deploy the stent into the PD. So one end of the stent will be in the PD and the other end will be in the stomach. So either you can do that procedure from the stomach or from the duodenum. So always you place a plastic stent. But there are some problems with antegrade technique. See, always you need to dilate the tract. That is the most difficult part. So we can use a tapered diacepic catheter, so either dilation catheter or a dilation balloon, or majority of the cases people use six French cystotome. But the problem with cystotome is that it has got acute and late burn effect. So it can cause severe pancreatitis, pancreatic juice leakage, bleeding and perforation. And not only that, it can adversely affect late surgical procedures because of inflammation and adhesion. So if you are going to compare rendezvous versus antegrade, rendezvous is more physiological, antegrade has got more complications, antegrade can affect later surgery. To be frank, I've done just a single antegrade procedure. I'm not a big fan of antegrade procedures. To conclude, EOS guided PD access can be attempted when PD cannot be accessed by ERCP. Stenting by rendezvous technique is better since it is more physiological, and stenting by antegrade technique should be attempted only after evaluating the future surgical options. Thank you.
So it was very two great talks by Dr. Wadhwa and Dr. Anup Koshi. And I would like to ask the chairpersons and moderators, is there any questions from their side to the speakers?
Yeah, one very good talk we had from both the speakers. One question regarding choledochoduodenostomy. Often we find that wire doesn't go in towards the hilum. It may be going towards the papilla or just coiling inside the CBD. What are the tips we can get from the speakers regarding direct the wire?
Yeah, thank you, Vishwanath, for asking that important question. If you take a slightly proximal puncture, that is slightly away, you are likely to direct your wire towards the left hepatic duct. So when you puncture on the higher side, your wire goes towards the left hepatic duct. And try not to depuncture it if you want to do a rendezvous procedure. Keep it as superficial. You need to give your wire a place to turn. Yes, occasionally you may not be able to cross the papilla because of the anatomy, but the Terumo wire probably is the most successful curved Terumo wire, which finds a trace. Rotate it slowly, try to get the opening, and then try to pass the wire. These are the only things which I can say. If you have to go towards the liver, puncture it slightly more proximally than generally you will puncture exactly at the junction.
And I would like to add that there's a special device from Boston. I think this is not available in India. In the wire, there's a rotating tip. So the needle has a rotating tip. So you can rotate the tip of the needle, like the puncture needle, which I saw in DDW in 2019. so that they can rotate the tip from the needle itself. So suppose your needle is going towards the wire is going towards the papilla, so you can rotate the tip towards the hilum. So that I think its trials have been done. I think, and it is not presently commercially available in US also, but few centers are using, and they showed it in for patients who they want to do rendezvous. Then they pass the wire down towards the papilla if the wire is going towards the hilum. And for patients who the wire is going towards the papilla and they want to push toward the hilum, that wire rotates. So that wire will be, I think, available or the needle will be available. It's from Boston to change the direction of the wire.
So one question again to Rajkumar sir. During hepaticogastrostomy, we usually prefer segment 3, but segment 2 is more easier for the accessories to pass across into the liver hilum, and stent also. Sometimes stenting may be difficult while going through the segment 3 duct because of the angulation. Any tips for that?
Actually, in my experience, segment 2 is more riskier because you tend to puncture proximal to G junction. It is important that you take a deeper. Now, earlier we thought that the dilated duct closer to hilum should be avoided, but now I think I'll prefer a dilated duct closer to hilum. That gives a sufficient transmural space. And yes, initially it may be difficult to pass, but once the guide wire passes, it is far lesser complications and far easier a procedure later on. The difficulty is you may leave the stent, you may puncture the esophagus, you may leave the whole length of the stent in the esophagus, which is difficult to then direct in the stomach. It is much more preferable to puncture through segment 3 rather than to segment 2. In fact, quite often I put an external marker to differentiate between the G junction so that I'm almost always in the stomach when I'm puncturing the liver. That is an important thing which I try to keep doing it.
Sir, I have a question, sir. Basically, what we initially face problem is in benign diseases like stone diseases, where there is getting difficult in cannulations. The IHBRs are not significantly dilated, and there is a small stone near the ampulla. And due to the wrinkled ampulla or that, in that case, what would be the ideal thing to do?
Ideal thing will be a extrahepatic rendezvous, access the guide wire, do a sphincterotomy, and then remove the small stone through the papilla. That will be the best option if you can.
The problem we face is
are not very well for the stone breaking techniques. We are still not very comfortable doing it. Not much of an experience personally for me. However, we have described that you can do a mechanical lithotripsy if the stones are large through the stent and then bring down the pieces. Those things can be adapted. But if possible, extrahepatic rendezvous will be the best option in these situations.
Sir, any special trick to maneuver the guide wire towards the ampulla rather than going to the hilum in this case of benign disease?
The position of the scope, a relatively straight position, and a gap between the distal wall of the bile duct and your needle should be higher so that you have the chance for the wire to hit across on the opposite wall and then try to divert toward the papilla. These are the only two things which I try to do when faced with these situations.
So I think we'll discuss the bile duct and then say so. We already discussed. So what dilatation accessory do you prefer? Whether you prefer a SBD or a cystotome, and what's your experience in that?
When I'm doing a hepatogastrostomy, I prefer to use a cystotome. As I mentioned in my talk, that I use a coagulation current. However, SBD is probably a very effective and a safer alternative. So in the biliary dilator. But for me, the relatively easier way to do both the duodenal puncture and the liver puncture is through cystotome. I personally prefer cystotome in these cases.
And since so many new beginners are there, so how many attempts do you take for a hepatogastrostomy? Suppose you punctured once and you're not able to get access. So how many punctures you will do and say no, and after that you say no, I'll not do it today and refer to do it some other day, or maybe refer for PTBD. So how many numbers of attempts do you say?
I have never put a fixed number to do it. It depends on the status of the bile duct, that is the location of the bile duct and the dilated amount. If I have a grossly dilated bile duct, I will definitely attempt once again. But if I have a very narrow bile duct, then I would try to abandon that particular site and try to see an alternate position. It depends on the choice of the bile duct and the location of bile duct rather than the number of attempts I would like to do. But on an average, if I'm not successful in 3 times, then I will say that no, I'm not going to get through this today.
And how to prevent complications, since there are 2 major complications which I feel are because we are doing. One is for CDS, for acute cholecystitis. How do you prevent, because the stent will go from the CVD into the upper bile duct or into intrahepatic duct. And for antegrade, we place a stent. How to prevent pancreatitis? Is there any things which during procedure which we do which can prevent pancreatitis?
There are no specific things which can prevent pancreatitis, as we normally would like to manipulate the bile duct. We rarely cannulate the pancreatic duct in these. You are not in a risk of cannulating the pancreatic duct or manipulating the pancreatic duct. So risk of pancreatitis is otherwise low. But I will make sure that my wire is properly in the duodenum and not leave my stent very close to the papilla. I will make sure that it is placed properly into the duodenum as far as the antegrade procedure is concerned. And pardon me, what was your first question?
So cholecystitis, sir. Suppose for the scoliodochondrostomy, so we put a stent from the CBD into the upper part of the CBD or into the, so
the shorter stent will be a better option in these circumstances to avoid the acute cholecystitis. Preferably a 4 centimeter stent will be the answer in these. You have a longer stent, you have a higher chance of blocking the cholecystic the duct. And so I would prefer to have a smaller stent in these circumstances. And if you put a smaller stent, maybe put a double pigtail stent to make sure that the stent remains in position. We don't have a shorter than 4 centimeter stent as of now available. So 4 centimeter remains the option for us to prevent the cholecystitis.
Lamps can be used in this case?
Lamps can be used, but the problem with the lamps is the diameter is the open section is very big. So you need to have a very largely dilated bile duct to properly place the lamps in these situations. In a medium or not very much dilated duct, lamp can be a difficult proposition to place.
And sir, one thing what type of needle do you use? You prefer access needle or you use a normal FNA needle which is available?
In the duodenum, I'm still using 19G Flex type of needle, which is from Boston and gives me a much more flexibility, much more than access. Access doesn't give any added advantage. So I use a conventional 19G needle in a liver puncture.
Only thing is access will the shearing of the wire will be less. So as compared to
I think once you learn the technique that wire should not shear, the chances that you will not find much of a difference between these. Okay. It is more for obtaining the tissue rather than the shearing of wire in these circumstances.
So what we can do now, we can move to the pancreatic duct access. So the things we have to learn is that for pancreatic access, the radiological colleagues are not of much help because the PD is placed posterior to stomach. So only it's the endoscopist, the US guided, or the surgeons who can help in these patients. So and the problem with the technique is it's very challenging and the ducts are not dilated as we see in bile duct. So I would like to ask Dr. Anup Koshi, what needle do you prefer? Because the shearing of or the manipulation is in a very tight space. So
I always use an access needle. As you told, every case which I've done is with an access needle. For me, there's a definite advantage with an access needle. The thing is, as you told, there's definitely the problem of shearing of the wire. So in PD, it's not easy to manipulate the guide wire. As you know, the space is very much restricted. So you don't know where the bevel is directed to. So if the bevel of the needle is not directed properly, it is very difficult to manipulate the guide wire. So I always use all cases which I've done is with an access needle.
And what type of wire? Do you start with exchange wire and then start with the short wire and then change to exchange wire? Or
all cases have been with a 0 to 5 inch like VisiGlide. I use honestly VisiGlide.
Start with VisiGlide only. Start first function and manipulation with VisiGlide.
Yeah, because you have 19 gauge, always use a Visiglyde, O25 Visiglyde.
And you prefer for a rendezvous gastric site. Is there an experience with your D1?
No,
Have you tried?
I never punctured D1. Every case has been with a gastric site.
Okay. And accessories, you prefer a cystotome or you prefer a...
No, for me, I told you, I've just done one antegrade, but because I'm not comfortable cauterizing through the pancreas. So all random, you don't need an accessory, just pass a guide wire. No? You don't need anything else. You puncture, pass a guide wire, and remove the needle, and then everything comes from the duodenum. So you don't need any dilatation catheters. Only in antegrade, you need to dilate things. But I won't prefer coagulating the pancreas with a cystotome. It can have bad pancreatitis and all. So I'm very reluctant to do that.
But only thing is, suppose the stricture in the head, and then the wire may not go into. So that time we have to do antegrade stenting only.
I understand that. Yeah.
And what stent do you prefer? What stent did you place in your case?
All my rendezvous have been either it's a single pigtail PD or a straight stent. I've used both plastic stents.
What are tips and tricks? You told that the scope should be very straight as you advised, but as compared to a hepatogastroscopy, the lesser curvature is more or less fixed, but the distal part of stomach and the greater curvature where we do puncture for pancreatogastroscopy, the stomach is very mobile.
Yeah.
So what are your tips and tricks? Other than you told that the scope should be very straight, that is for all EUS procedure, as straight as possible.
Yeah, always under fluoro, you make sure that, and see, thing is when you do under fluoro, you know that if you do a bit tip up, the scope becomes more angulated towards the head. And it's a bit of elevator, not much of elevator, a bit of elevator also, the scope becomes more of angulated towards the needle becomes more of angulated towards the papilla. So a bit of tip up and a bit of elevator, not much, because if you're going to angulate too much, you won't be able to make a smooth puncture. Under fluoro, the initial position is very important. Choosing that position. Under fluoro, make sure, because you can choose different places. When you do PD, you can puncture different sides. So under fluoro, make sure you get the best puncture direction.
Okay. And you showed the specific modification to your ERCP cannula.
Yeah.
So other option could be done is we do a NKP over the wire. The wire is already in place. If NKP can be done over the so that access the problem is with entering the first site and exchange of that. So if NKP can be done over the wire, that could be, I think, one of the other option which can be done.
Sure, you're right. Yeah.
Okay.
But here, use that process it gets over very fast. See, wherever you use this modified cannula, other pulling the guide wire through the scope panel is very cumbersome. The first case which I showed, the wire was looping over the scope, so it was a big messy procedure.
Yeah.
When I used a modified cannula, it was clean, straight, smooth procedure. The procedure got over very fast.
Okay. So there's a question from audience for Dr. Wadhwa is what is the preferred stent for choledochoduodenostomy?
I use a fully covered short stent, either 4 or 6 centimeters. 4s are sometimes not easily available, so I use 6 centimeters. But as I said that whenever I use a fully covered stent, I will put in a double pigtail stent along with it.
Okay. And any other questions from co-panelists or chairpersons? Do they want to ask or comment something?
One question to Anup. Sorry, sir. You can go ahead, sir.
No problem. Vishwanath, you can speak. I'll speak later. No problem.
Anup, question to you. The cases of chronic pancreatitis are like you will have a stiff tissue. Any tips to push the needle across into the PD?
No. For that, I make multiple attempts. That's it. Nothing else I can, specific tips or tricks I can give on that. Just like you make a FNA puncture. That's it. Nothing else.
To Anup, why don't you choose duodenum, which is far more stable with a relatively less space for your scope to move around, and choose always stomach for pancreatic puncture? Any specific reason? As
I told you, I've mostly rendezvous. So for me, directing the wire into the papilla is always easy from the stomach. It's a straight shot, unlike the other thing where you may find it a bit difficult. And some case of leaks, which I showed you, the leak is in the neck. So there's no point puncturing from the head. So you have to go from the body, you have to negotiate across the leak. the cases which I showed, both cases leak were in the neck of the pancreas. One was in the head of the pancreas. So you need to puncture from the stomach, pass the wire across the leak into the duodenum. Then only you can bridge that leak.
Anup, question to you. When you do antegrade stenting in the pancreas, so is there a chance that the stent, plastic stent, would you put slips off or migrates?
See, as I told Venkat, I've just done one case. For me, no sort of such things happen, because with one case experience, I cannot comment much on that. But usually you place a you do only a plastic stent. You never place a. Some people resort to metal stent, but that I don't think that's advisable. You put only a plastic stent. For me, for that case, I didn't have any sort of problems with like this.
Okay, so I think the time is up. I would like to thank both the speakers, Dr. Wadhwa and Dr. Koshi, and all the chairpersons and the moderators who have done an excellent job. And I would like to thank the organizers for giving us the opportunity. And since they are going to start a live session soon, so thank you all and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you.